Hi, and welcome to Japanese Explainer. This is our very first week, and I really appreciate everybody for being here and listening. So what is our question that a member asked this week? Godswill asked if I could give a word order listing for Japanese that might be easy to remember. Well, Godswill, yes, I can, but I would be remiss if I did so without telling you why word order is a red herring for anyone who's just learning Japanese. Is there a sort of default normal word order that a sentence comes in Japanese? Yes, there is. But it is really not important in the way that English speakers think it is. It's important because everything's important in language, but it is not important for the same reasons. So I'm going to illustrate this by saying two sentences in English that have the same words in them but are very different. John walked the dog. The dog walked John. Those two sentences are very different. The two nouns we talk about, John and the dog, are doing totally different things from one sentence to another, right? We have very different impressions of what this means. And that is because in English, the kind of English that we speak today, the order of a sentence is what determines what case a noun or any other type of non-verb word is in. I'm not going to dive too deep into what exactly is case because that would take a long time, and this is a short video. But what I am going to do is tell you many languages out there have ways of manipulating the words independently of the word order, changing the words themselves in order to tell you what role a word is playing in a sentence. So Latin is a famous example that many English speakers know. Russian, Hungarian, Finnish, Lithuanian, just a few languages that tell you who is walking whom without necessarily relying on the word order because they're doing it in some other way by literally changing the way that the words sound or appending something to them in some way that tells us what's going on. And in those languages, because word order is not the only way we figure this stuff out, you can rearrange the word order a little bit. Now, Japanese falls into that category. And in Japanese, you can actually manipulate the word order a ton because the way that Japanese tells you who's doing what in a sentence is with particles. So, wa, ga, o, ni, e, de. Particles like that append to the end of a word, and it's the particle that tells you what is this word doing, not the word order. So it is more important for you to put the right particle on the word than to put the word in a specific place in the sentence. So let's try, I gave a cake to John. Don-san ni keiki wo agemashita. And if I wanted to put myself in the sentence, which we don't do in Japanese, maybe a good topic for another video, I could say, Watashi wa John-san ni keiki wo agemashita. And that is actually the default word order in Japanese, but it also has a particle after every little bit that tells you what is going on. So who gave John the cake is going to be marked off with wa or ga. In that case, it's me, watashi, which doesn't have to be in the sentence. Again, we can cover that in a different video. But if I'm putting the subject or the topic in a sentence, default word order goes at the beginning, but it's got a wa or a ga. And then John-san ni. John is the indirect object, the person I'm giving the cake to. And so he gets a ni to say, hello, this person that's attached to the ni is an indirect object. It's not where I put John in the sentence that tells me that. It's the ni that tells me that. Wo is my favorite particle. One day it may be yours as well, because wo is the only particle that only ever does one thing. We don't have to talk about wo. Wo is great because it does one thing and it tells you the direct object, and that's all it will ever do It's lovely. It's wonderful. The direct object is the cake. What am I giving? 케이크이고. I know exactly what the cake is. It's the direct object. Why? Because it has a wo. And if you have wo, you're the direct object. That's just how life works. So, 私はジョンさんにケーキをあげました is default word order. But I could also say ジョンさんに私はケーキをあげました. And it's a sentence that means the same thing. I am, by changing the word order, merely emphasizing a slightly different thing in the sentence. I can change the word order pretty much however I want, and what the word order is conveying to you is just what do I think is important or surprising about what I'm saying. It is not telling you what I mean in terms of the facts. So, 私はジョンさんにケーキをあげました。ジョンさんに私はケーキをあげました。私はケーキをジョンさんにあげました。These are all different sentences, and they're all conveying a slightly different impression, but the basic facts, which is that I gave John a cake, are not changing whatsoever because the particles are remaining attached to the right things. So you need to think of Japanese as a Lego set. And I can build whatever sentence I want with this Lego set as long as I'm attaching the right Legos together. Legos that fit together. Which is, let's be real, almost all Legos. It's pretty great. It's wonderful. It's freeing. It is very difficult for some English speakers to let go of the idea that the word order is what makes the meaning, because it's just not how we speak in English. But you need to be embracing that about Japanese, because if you don't put the right particles in the right place, you are not communicating correctly. And that is what you need to nail from jump, from day one. You need to be concerned about, am I putting the right particles in the right place? And then you can be concerned about, now, do I remember the default order so that I'm meaning the default thing when I mean to? I'm not weirdly emphasizing stuff. And that's going to come naturally just as you converse. But I did promise you that I could give you an easy way to remember the default word order, so I'm going to do that. I am going to tell you that Japanese word order is an SOV. Now, if you thought I said son of a something, no, my friend. I said not B as in boy, but V as in verb. Japanese is a subject, object, verb language. So, subject, object, usually the indirect object comes before the direct object, and then verb is the last thing. That is the default word order, and you're gonna remember it by being like, this is so difficult. What an SOV. All right, tune in next week. Thanks. Let me know if this was helpful in the comments.